So the first month of the year, and this is nearly every year, we do our best to teach the fundamental, pure forms of these spiritual teachings, of this New Thought spiritual teaching that we practice here. So for this month, we've been using some of Ernest Holmes' many books. And today we're going to conclude that theme by expanding beyond Ernest Holmes to other teachers, to other authors and other concepts. And where he got some of his ideas from, because he will tell you that he got them, as I'll talk about, he gathered them from many different places. So I love this statement, and this is from Science of Mind magazine from a while ago, but this is Ernest Holmes, what he said. The philosophy of religious science is nothing new to the world. It is rather a synthesis of the greatest concepts that have ever come to the mind of man. The law of Moses, the love of Christ, the ethics of Buddha, the morals of Confucius, the deep spiritual realizations of the Hindus, the mystical revelations of the saints of the Middle Ages, the laws of parallels and compensation from Emerson, the logic of Kant, the spirituality of Swedenborg, the beauty of Browning, and the wide universal sweep of Walt Whitman, all find an exalted place in this philosophy of religious science. I never had a revelation, Holmes says. He never had a revelation. I never had a revelation, final or otherwise. And the knowledge I've acquired was here on earth when I arrived and will be available after I've shuffled off. Wherever you find truth, it belongs to everybody. So what a humble man, but what a truthful man, because truth is truth. No one, nobody invented it. It's always been here. It always will be. But we've been blessed to touch into it, to actually know that. And today we're going to round out the month of exploring the nuts and bolts of our teachings by looking at three of the truths in religious science, New Thought, which not coincidentally are the same three truths from the wisdom of the ages taught by the mystics of the ages. But before we do that, I want to take a moment or two to explore the meaning of mystic. So we're sure to be on the same page of what Holmes believes is mysticism. Who is a mystic, and what is mysticism? Before looking into what mysticism means, let's look at what it doesn't mean. Mysticism is not magic. It is not clairvoyance. It is not psychic experiences, nor does it necessarily mean having revelations or visions. Webster's New Collegian Dictionary describes mysticism as one, the experience of union or direct communion with ultimate reality, or two, the belief that direct knowledge of God, spiritual truth, or ultimate reality can be attained through subjective experience. That's our intuition. So as we are in alignment with this infinite energy, this power of good that we call God, we are having somewhat of a mystical experience, even in a moment. The word mystic itself, it comes from an ancient Greek word, and it means the closing of the eyes. That's what it means. Engaging in mysticism means that to close the physical eyes so that we can see with the soul, that we can see with our divine eyes. So a mystic is someone who believes with no doubt, no hesitancy, no need to change anything, that he lives and moves and has his being in God. And he believes he can have, and in fact has, a direct communion with God. We usually get this communion when we are in meditation, when we're in deep into prayer, when we're in contemplation, when we're in any of those still places. We can allow the infinite to move through us. That is the connection. That is the mystic, and the mystic lives in that all of the time. In Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes says, a mystic is not a mysterious person, but is one who has a deep inner sense of life and of his unity with the whole. A mystic is one who intuitively perceives truth without mental process and arrives at spiritual realization. And who are some of the great mystics of the ages? And I know there's so many, many, many more, but prophets such as Buddha, David, Solomon, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, philosophers such as Plato, Plotinus, Emerson, Holmes, spiritual leaders and theologians, all the way from the Christian German mystic Meister Eckhart to the Dalai Lamas throughout the ages. Rabbi David Cooper, who wrote the wonderful book that God is a Verb, very well-known book, he wrote, let's see what he wrote. God is a verb. He wrote that when you look at the statements of the mystics throughout the ages, regardless of their spiritual affiliation, regardless of the time of their existence, regardless of the region in the world that they're from, they speak of the same things. They reveal the same revelations. And this is what he wrote. There is a universal connection between ancient and modern, between Eastern and Western. Someone once wrote, in all the 10 directions of the universe, there is only one truth. When we see clearly, the great teachings are the same. One truth. And what are those teachings? As I said this morning, I want to look at three. I'm going to look at three of them. And they are summed up in the words written by Ernest Holmes in the Science of Mind book. Truth number one, this is all coming from Holmes, and then we'll explore it a little bit. Truth number one, all the mystics sense that we live in one life. We live in one life. We are one with all, as the readings were so perfect, incredibly perfect with this. We are all individualized. In him this is Holmes, in him we live, move, and have our being. The unity of good is a revelation of the greatest importance, for it teaches that we are one with the whole, W-H, whole. Or, slightly put, the mystics have recognized the absolute unity of God and man. They have told us of the marvelous relationship which exists between God and man, of a close unity of which cannot be spoken. And that's on page 419. I'll give you the pages to each of these. Truth number two, the great mystics have all agreed that our life is ours to do with as we choose. We have free will. But that when we turn to the one, we will always receive inspiration from on high. That's when we get that divine guidance. It's really the only way to truly live life, to be in the flow, when we allow that inspiration to move through us. Truth number three, they have all agreed that the soul is on the pathway of experience, that it is of self-discovery, and it is on its way back to the Father's house. Prodigal son, that's the greatest parable. Always the Father with open arms welcomes everybody back. we have never been separated. We just think we have, and that's the illusion of life. All the mystics have known the universe has to be one. One. Jesus said it. A house divided against itself cannot stand. If we but remember, that's a great, great quote. And he also said, if he who hath seen me hath seen the Father. Because we are each one of us God. Each one of us. God. I am God. You are God. We are all God. Meister Eckhart. God is nearer to me than I am to my own self. My life depends upon God being near me. He is also present in a stone or a log of wood, only they do not know it. They do not know it because they just touch the animal kingdom, the mineral kingdom. It's the consciousness is just pure. They don't have to recognize a higher power. Only humans have to recognize a higher power, and that's okay. It's kind of cool, actually. But, you know, it is what it is, but it is kind of cool. The only humans do. Animals don't. They don't go to, like, little boxes and churches and worship. They just are. They go by their nature. In the Gospel of St. Thomas, Jesus said, I am the light that is over all things. I am all. From me all came forth, and to me all attained. Split a piece of wood, I am there. Lift up a stone, and you will find me there. God was once described as that whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. We watched the film on Wednesday, the Spiritual Wednesdays, and it was called Samadhi. And I thought that that brought the oneness. It was such a brilliant movie, film, if you will. There was so much entertainment in that afterwards there was no words to really share, to speak, because you can't describe that which is indescribable. It was a mystical movie. God was once described as this infinite presence, this presence which is in each and every one of us. If its center is everywhere, imagine that for a moment. Its center is everywhere. If its center is everywhere, then it is here, and it is there. It is everywhere. There's no place that this divine energy is not. We just can't see it with these human eyes. We can, however, see it with the intuitive eyes of the indwelling self. That's where we see it, our conscious awareness. Each living soul is a center of God. You and I are all centers of this one unity. We need to remember this. It is the greatest gift we can give ourselves, this awareness. That is what we talk about when we say awareness. This is an overriding concept that we must get. And not just get in our heads, but move it to a deeper level in our hearts. Really feel it. All the music today and the sharing and the readings were coming from not just the mind. That's a tool. The brain, the mind is a tool, but from the heart, from that deep place. And we need to talk about this oneness, unity over and over again. Not to let it out of our awareness, to bring it in, to live it. And it brings us back to truth number 2, individuality. A second truth that the mystics have taught after the biggie that we are all one, there is only this unified field of oneness. And Ernest Holmes said this, our life is ours to do with as we choose. we get choice. We have free will. Within the infinite, he said, this is what he said. Within the infinite, each individual exists, not as separated, but as a separate entity. We're not separated from the oneness, but we are separated in our individuality. We are each a point of universal consciousness. We are individualized centers of God. Isn't that something? It's what we believe. That's what this is all about. And so we are separate beings with our own choice, our own ability to decide, to choose, our own gifts and talents, and I might add, our own challenges and obstacles to overcome, because that's part of being a human. But when we turn to the one, we always receive inspiration from on high. Sometimes it takes a crisis, it does, for us to turn to the one. But I say whatever it takes, whatever it takes. Remember our spiritual expansion and evolution. And it's rarely ever preceded by a good day. Dark night of the soul. We can have our greatest openings, our greatest awarenesses by what we call pain. But that truly is a gift also, because it's making us aware of something. Something's not missing, but something to be aware of. And that brings us into, that's the individuality, that's the choice. We get to choose how we respond to any challenge, to any experience. And there's some doozies out there, and they're in our face right now, as we know. And they can be very difficult to see the good, the God, in them. But that's where our choice comes in. What do we do with that? What do we do with that? Do we start breeding hatred in our hearts? Do we do that? Or do we choose? Choose to just love and be grateful for what is ours to love and be grateful for. It's our choice. Truth 3, the path of self-discovery. The third truth that the mystics have taught us, again, to quote Ernest Holmes, the soul is on its pathway of experience, that is, of self-discovery, that is on its way back, as I said before, to the Father's house. And that means in our unique, individualized way, our true purpose is to awaken to who we really are. Individualized creations of the one life. That's who we truly are. Rabbi Cooper writes in his book, God is a Verb, one of the primary texts of the Kabbalah cries out to humankind saying, you beings on earth are in deep slumber, awaken. It pleads with us, stop sleeping, wake up. What are you waiting for? And Rabbi Cooper then writes, in my readings and wanderings throughout the years, I have gathered wisdom teachings from around the world. And in truth, if we were able to collate and distill all that I collected, it could be summed up entirely in 3 admonitions of this Kabbalistic teaching. Awaken, enlighten, transform darkness into light. Awaken, enlighten, and transform darkness into light. Spiritual teachers, this is still Rabbi Cooper. Spiritual teachers ultimately agree that true wisdom does not come from outside of us, but from within. And it does not come from within simply because we want it to. It comes when we live in a way that invites wisdom. It comes through direct experience. We have to live these teachings, this truth, in order to wake up We have to use it in our everyday lives. So I think in this talk we've come full circle, because what was the first definition of mysticism I shared earlier was it is an experience or union, a direct union or communion with the ultimate reality. That's mysticism. The mystics of all ages have taught that we are here on earth to do the exact same thing. We are here to be mystics. We are here to have these experiences, mystical experiences, in the midst of all of life's ins, outs, and ups and downs, and light and darkness. We are still one with the pure light of the divine. And how can we move to a mystical place in our lives? Rabbi Cooper says we live in a way that invites wisdom. And that means we need to do more than just come to a spiritual center or church on Sunday and listen to these concepts and ideas. Although that is very important and very helpful on this journey, it means that we have to do more than read the writings of the great mystics and other great teachers, although this is also helpful in this journey. It means more than taking classes, although that is very, very profound. But if all we do is listen, read, study, and never change the way we live our lives, we will not awaken. Amen. We will not awaken. We can read all the books we want. S. Warren said in his book entitled Meditation, no matter how many mystics we read, we cannot move forward on the spiritual path without practicing their teachings in daily life. One temporary thinker put it very well when he remarked that if we had to choose between uniting ourselves with God and hearing a lecture about it, most of us would hunt for a good seat, which is easier. He then shares a story of a time where he visited the home of a very well-known writer on spiritual themes, who took him into his exceptionally well-stocked library. There were books of every conceivable kind on meditation. It was really an impressive collection. And this is what the rabbi said, with all these books on the subject, I said, you must be very adept in meditation. He looked a little embarrassed. Frankly, he said, I'm too busy reading, studying, writing, that I don't have time to meditate. Make the time. Be in that stillness. The stillness is where the divine resides, and we are part of the divine, but we must practice this in everyday life. And right now, we can be on our mystical path by living our lives in a way that invites wisdom. We can all awaken. We can all become enlightened. We can all transform the darkness into light when we begin to live in a way that invites wisdom. The greatest advice we could ever receive is from the Psalms. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. Mystical poet of India, Kabir. Where do you go in search of God? Nowhere. He is with you. Meister Eckhart. No one can know God who has not first known himself. Go to the depths of the soul, the secret place, to the roots, to the heights. For all that God can do is focused there. Can only do it through us, as us. Dalai Lama. True enlightenment is nothing but the nature of one's own self being fully realized. And Jesus said, go to the inner chamber. We can all be mystics. We can all have mystical experiences. We can all tap into the wisdom of the ages when we live in a way that invites this wisdom in. Not just reading about it, not just talking about it, but turning within. And I invite all of us to do this. And I say that because it's true. To remember, most of the time, that there is a guidance, an intuitive voice that is so connected to all that is within us when we but turn to it in all situations, in all circumstances. I invite you, if you haven't already, to spend some time in meditation, in the stillness. That's what the meditation is. Allow the great I am to reveal the beauty of who you are to you, to impart its wisdom, because it will, to you, to guide and direct you. I invite you to awaken to your own divinity. Right here, right now. So it is.
So it is.